All right, let's jump straight into this fascinating explainer about an ancient superpower that genuinely believed it was completely invincible. Based on the historical and religious texts we're diving into today, we're going to explore the story of a civilization that achieved unparalleled dominance, only to be, well, entirely erased from the map. It's a narrative that blends incredible human achievement with profound arrogance, and it gives us a really compelling look at how ancient texts describe the rise and fall of absolute empires. Who is greater than us in strength? Just think about that for a second. This arrogant boast perfectly captures the fatal hubris of the Aeneid. According to the source material, this was a civilization that mistakenly equated massive physical power with eternal security. They looked around at their own physical stature and their unstoppable military might, and they literally believed that nothing in the universe, natural or divine, could ever challenge them. They became so intoxicated by their own capabilities that this question basically became their defining national motto.
So, to understand how they got there, we trace their lineage back to Shem, the son of the prophet Noah, or Noah. We see how humanity repopulated after the Great Flood, leading right to this precise moment in history. Following the flood, these descendants migrated and eventually settled in a region known as Ahakaf. Now, this was a valley made up of sandhills located right between Oman and Hadramaut in modern-day Yemen. It was an incredibly fertile area, absolutely bursting with water and rain, which served as the perfect incubator for the rapid, explosive rise of the Ad nation.
We are talking about people who were physically gigantic and blessed with incredible natural wealth. They were the absolute superpower of their era. The texts actually describe these people as being as tall and thick as the trunks of date palm trees. Combine that unmatched, massive physical size with a valley that was basically a garden of paradise, full of lush agriculture, an endless supply of water, and immense wealth in livestock, and you have a recipe for total regional dominance. Honestly, no neighboring nation could even come close to challenging them.
Naturally, they used that massive strength to build. And they didn't just build normal homes, they carved magnificent palaces straight out of mountains. They built the unparalleled city of Iram, erecting structures on towering marble columns. In fact, the sources note that this area became known as the land of 1,000 pillars. They built luxurious estates, beautiful parks, and massive wide streets. They were essentially trying to rival heaven itself right there on Earth.
But as you might guess, immense worldly power often breeds tyranny and moral decay. Because they felt completely untouchable, they became bullies. They'd actually put up wrong signs on roads just to mock and laugh at weary travelers who got lost, and then they'd beat and rob them. They built massive centers of debauchery, strictly for entertainment. And spiritually, the belief in one god was entirely replaced by polytheism. They began worshipping stone idols they carved themselves, specifically naming them Samad, Samud, and Hara.
Which brings us to the next phase of the story, the message of Hud, a lone truth-teller among giants.
To guide them back from this deep corruption, a prophet was sent from their very own tribe. This was a noble, completely honest, and trustworthy man named Hud. Now, imagine his task. He had to stand up, entirely alone, in front of a society of literal giants who believed they were the masters of the universe. Hud's approach was completely rational and compassionate. He patiently asked for zero monetary rewards to guide them. He simply argued that if they sought forgiveness and worshiped the one creator, they'd be blessed with even more rain and even greater strength. But the elites? They arrogantly dismissed him. They claimed he had no logical evidence, accused him of just wanting to be their master, and eventually decided that their stone gods had actually cursed Hud with an evil madness.
Central to their sheer arrogance was their absolute denial of the afterlife. When Hud warned them that they would be held accountable after death, they simply couldn't fathom it. They laughed at the idea. They believed that once their giant bodies decayed in the earth and their bones turned to dust, they were completely beyond any divine judgment. They essentially argued that the only life is this worldly one. You live, you die, and that's the end of the story.
So we move to the next chapter, the warning drought. Nature begins to turn against the invincible. After years of Hud's patient preaching and relentless mockery from the Ads, a massive shift happens. The very nature they relied on to sustain their massive wealth starts turning against them. According to the accounts, for 3 grueling years the rain was completely withheld. Their lush, beautiful gardens, their abundant agriculture, and their wide canals, they all began to dry up. The incredibly fertile valley of Akaf was gradually turning into a dead, scorched wasteland. This was clearly meant to be a wake-up call, a sign to shake them out of their arrogance.
But you know what? Even as their wealth withered away and their livestock suffered, their pride remained perfectly intact. Instead of reflecting on Hud's warnings, they doubled down. They actually blamed Hud for the drought. They claimed his insults against their idols had caused this terrible misfortune. They even demanded that Hud just bring on the punishment he'd been promising them, basically saying, if you're so truthful, bring us what you promise us. This sets the stage for the dramatic conclusion, the devastating wind, the final climax of Aram.
Well, the Aad had asked for their punishment, and nature was about to deliver something far beyond their comprehension. The skies finally darkened over the once thriving valley. When the Aad saw this massive black cloud approaching on the horizon, they actually jumped up and cheered with joy. They shouted that their idols had finally showed them mercy and sent rain for their dying vineyards. But Hud delivered his final, chilling reality check. They were completely wrong. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just wrong. It wasn't a rain cloud at all. It was the very wind of wrath they had impatiently demanded, carrying absolute, painful destruction.
The dark cloud unleashed what the historical texts call sarsar. This was a terrifying roaring wind. And we're not just talking about a strong breeze here. It was a wind blowing with unprecedented speed and an intensely freezing temperature. It made a deafening, terrifying sound as it blew, instantly snapping massive trees right in half and shattering those giant, supposedly indestructible marble columns like they were absolutely nothing.
This invisible, relentless force battered the arrogant giants for 7 nights and 8 days straight. Think about that. The Ad, who constantly bragged about their unmatched physical strength, tried to hug boulders and thick tree trunks just to anchor themselves. But the wind was so violently powerful that it ripped the doors right off their palaces and lifted these massive giants into the air like weightless pieces of straw, smashing them headfirst into the ground. You really have to notice the profound irony here. When those 8 days were finally over, the once invincible giants were left lying lifeless on the ground. The source text specifically described them as resembling hollow, uprooted trunks of date palm trees. The exact same people who spent their lives boasting, "Who is greater than us in strength?" who literally thought they were gods on earth, were entirely wiped out by formless, invisible air.
Meanwhile, the sources note a truly miraculous survival for the righteous. It's said that Prophet Hud and his followers, which was around 4,000 believers, withdrew to an enclosed space. While that hurricane completely leveled the magnificent city of Aram right outside, within their enclosure, this exact same catastrophic storm felt like nothing more than a gentle, soothing breeze to their bodies. After the destruction, Hud and his followers left the ruined valley and settled elsewhere in the Arabian Peninsula.
Let's wrap up with our final point, the timeless lesson. Echoes of Adrian in the modern world.
You see, the empty, buried ruins of Aram aren't just an ancient history lesson. They're a profound warning for us today. As we build our own towering cities and marvel at human strength and incredible technological advancements, the story of the Odd forces us to ask a really difficult question. Are we placing our faith purely in our own power, believing we're completely untouchable? Or are we capable of remaining humble before the forces that truly sustain us? It's a fascinating narrative from these texts, and it definitely challenges us to reconsider where true strength actually lies.